Can I make sure this week I am recording?
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be quite punchy today, so I'm going to not in the usual way, in the verbal way here, because we've got an hour to get through. And I said last week that I could have chosen an easier subject than the past, present, future of man, with our money, our mind, our material possessions, and our relationship with God. I was reminded of that yesterday. And to do a quick recap of last week, we looked at the Garden of Eden as the beginning of man. And the major factors in there were the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the tree of eternal life, that God, in making us like him, breathing his spirit into us, the 2 points that I emphasized was, one, that we were given the godlike power to create with our speech. Unlike any other living creature, we can create with our words. And the other point was that God created us for companionship with him, to be like him, so that we could have that companionship. And then he created woman to be like man, so that man had companionship. So it's in our nature to be herd creatures, to have company, to have companionship. This is what we were created for. Man was created for companionship, and he was created to rule over the world. And then we went on a little bit, and we looked at, as man went on, they went to the Tower of Babel, and that's very interesting, the Tower of Babel. And I put that as one of the points where in our evolution, our growth, our history as human beings, as Homo sapiens, was the one point that we all came together and then wanted to challenge God by building the Tower of Babel and making it waterproof. First, it was a monument to ourselves because of what we had achieved, and secondly, it was a rebellion against God, that if he flooded the world again, they could run into the tower and they'd be saved. So they got together, they got clever, and then they challenged God. And I took that forward to what we're doing now, which is sharing knowledge, having a common language, because I can speak to anybody in the world on a chat, and it'll automatically translate from whatever language they're typing to English. Automatically. This is not even new technology. This is used particularly in the gaming world, where people are chatting online. So they're playing the game and they're chatting to people across the world. My language is English, so it auto-translates from Russian, Chinese. Everybody to me is speaking English. And when I type back in English, they're getting it in Chinese or Russian or Spanish or Italian. We may not all speak the same language, but communication is there now. Forget Google Translate, which was, remember the old days, they used to, when you went to Japan, you had this little box that you would type in and then it would speak in Japanese. Now our phones do that. You can put a headset and I can speak to you in English and you'll be hearing what I say in Japanese. We're getting that language, that communication back again. And our technology is advanced enough that we're challenging God in our medical frontiers, in our culture, and where we're heading. And I spoke as well that we were Homo sapiens, being the humans that we are versus the Neanderthals that were here. We then advanced to become Homo sapiens sapiens, and the next step is to become Homo Deus, the man who is God. Now, and on that I went down the route a little bit where the ambition of human beings as it is, it's always been that we want to know things that we don't know, whether they're good or bad. We love the gossip and we like to gain knowledge. We hate being in the dark about something, and we also fear dying. And in trying to gain as much knowledge and understanding of everything, and in trying to live forever, that is what we're doing at the moment. We're trying to make God irrelevant. Interestingly, when I looked up the Tower of Babel, one of the first references that came up was the Wikipedia reference saying that it was a parable and a myth. A parable and a myth in a real place. When I looked up tyrant, one of the first things that came up is God a tyrant? The Bible warns us about tyrants. The world warns us about God, saying that he is a tyrant. He sits up there, he makes laws that he doesn't have to follow, and he enforces them and enslaves or tortures people who doesn't give them what they want. These are not our perspectives. I'm trying to show you what's happening around us. And after the last talk, I had a few people ask me questions and pass comments, and I was very glad to hear any comment, good or bad. One of them I heard was, it's going over their heads. Another one is, we don't understand anyway what you're saying. And I'm glad to be back for a follow-on talk, which was actually the end of the first talk, but I've changed direction a bit, because the whole point is, what are we doing, where are we going with technology, and how does it affect us as Christians? And I spoke last time about how my mother, being 71, couldn't give a damn what's going to happen to the world in 10 years or 20 years, because she doesn't plan to be here. She certainly doesn't think she will be. I know Langebaan may be a little bit behind the times compared to Cape Town, but they do have medical interventions. And some of the stuff is quite... We're going to live longer. Human beings are living longer. That's creating a problem in the world, because we didn't budget on people living this long. And so when I looked at it and I had to choose a direction for this week, do I continue on the talk, which we started with machines, medicine, money, and then minds? And naturally from minds, there are two major things we have to look at. One is social media, and the other one is artificial intelligence. And the question is, how is it affecting our society, and what are we supposed to do about it? Now, you're a hard crowd to speak to about technology. And what people would say is advanced technology, and what people would say is advanced technology is so old. People are like, oh, this is a new thing. No, that's been around for 3 years. We've moved on from that already. So what are you supposed to do about it if I give you this knowledge of what's happening? And what does the Bible say? So let me clarify the perspective that I'm coming from. This is not all going to affect you in many ways. These fantastic medical interventions are not going to arrive in South Africa and on your medical aid like that. We are years behind the rest of the world in our medicine. And the technology is not going to affect, some of us don't even have phones, mobile phones, right? And others of you will have Facebook or Twitter or this or that. So you're not heavily involved in this world. And this is what stuck out to me, is that there's stuff going on that you don't know that you don't know. You're not even aware of what's happening, because it's not your world. And the world where it is happening is specifically geared to be kept away from you. So what's the relevance here? In Proverbs 24:11, deliver those who are drawn toward death, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? Now that's quite heavy, because what I'm saying to you is, this may not affect you directly, but it's affecting your grandkids and your kids and their friends and our society. And if you say, I didn't know, that doesn't mean that you don't have responsibility. And here's the whole dichotomy of this talk is that we have 4 generations living right now, if we exclude the tiny ones. We've got the boomers, we've got the Gen X's, the boomers, which is sort of 65 plus, the post-war babies. Yeah. So we've got the boomers, and I was lucky enough to audit a few lectures on generational differences, which was fascinating. But the boomers, essentially, the view is formed after the war. And there was a lot of disenchantment with the world and with the governments after the war. One thing that we knew was there's right and there's wrong. But we also looked at the church and at business and at the world and said, your rules didn't work for us. Because, 2 wars so quickly after the other, people turn around and say, well, this is just a lot of rubbish. Governments don't know what they're doing. They can't control this. But there was a very clear line between right and wrong and duty and sacrifice. But there was also one for freedom of control, that women could go out and work. People could choose to be married or not. People could choose, I don't have to carry on my father's tradition. I can go do something else. I can go into a career. I can go to university when my family's never been to university. So there was that adventurousness, but there was still a mindset that you do good, you look after things, you invest, you'll have a house, you'll have a decent career, your kids will grow up well and you'll have grandkids, and this is good. Then, well, there was the 60s and the 70s.
Excuse me, Martin's just calling me to Dorothy. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm just going out the door again, so you're not feeling well.
Oh, coughing here. Then came the Gen X's, which is my generation, but admittedly I'm right at the bottom, which is like 45 to 65, who had the same mindset of go to school. When you finish school, you can go to university, you can go to college, you're going to get a trade, you'll get a career, date a girl or a guy, find Mr. or Miss Right. After 2 years, get engaged. After a year or 2, get married, have kids, have a career, own a home, and retire. Same view, maybe more rebellious, which is what we got from our parents. And then after that is the millennials. And we've heard a lot of nonsense about millennials for years now, about how they're soft and they're weak and they don't want to, there's no first prize and second prize, that they want open plan offices. They don't want to call the boss Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, that they swap jobs, that they moan a lot, that everything is about self-gratification. But we made them. Gen X in particular raised children that way. After them is Gen Z, which is the 25s and under. Okay, so we've got the under 25s, 25s to 45s, 45 to 65, and 65 plus. And I'm lucky, I've got 4 sons, 22, 22, 24, and 27.
Wow.
Twins.
Yeah, the 2 22-year-olds are.
Oh, you said 22, 23.
And I get to see, well, I think I get to see what's going on. And I spoke last time about how not one of them voted because they're apathetic. They don't think they can change anything. How only recently did 3 of them get girlfriends because they don't want to date. How well, I don't want to go too deep in it, but oddly, what I'm going to focus on today is not us, but the young people. Those 25s and unders, those 25s to 45s. Because when you understand what they're going through, you'll understand what you can do about it. So let's start there with, you don't know what you don't know. Some of the things I'm going to tell you will be absolutely stunning, horrifying. When lockdown happened, a lot of kids were being schooled from home, and parents were at home, and like me, my kids were at school during lockdown. Now there's no teacher, so they call me, I don't know, what? Huh? What is this stuff? I got exposed to what my kids were learning and how they were learning. Because what we do is we tend to think of our kids as the same as us, but worse. Our generation was better. Our generation was better. What's happening with these young people? They are lazy. They're always on their phones. They backchat. They're not interested. They don't want to go out and play sport. They're entitled. They don't want to buckle down and do the hard things. Right? So that's our view. And I know my grandparents thought of my mother like that, my saintly mother, but I know what my mother got up to. Because my grandfather never owned a car in his life. But he bought her a Mini. And never having owned a car, he didn't know that she could disconnect the odometer and go down to Boksburg for a jaw, drive back and reconnect the odometer. So all he read was the miles from their house to the friend and back. Right? He didn't know that you could do. He didn't even know that he didn't know that you could adjust an odometer. And think here on a lighter note, what things you did that your parents didn't know about. Now, some of it they did know, but a lot of it they didn't. I know is the stuff we used to get up to as kids, our parents would have killed us. I know the one game we used to play was, we used to put on our army clothes. And I grew up like a real boy, motorbikes and sticks and guns and sports and, okay, we had computer games, but literally we would sit in the lounge, play for about an hour, get bored, and then go outside. But we used to play this game. I lived opposite a farm and a wild area, and the boys all used to put our camo clothes on, and we'd play army games with stones, those concrete chips. Which are not round stones, they're sharp stones. And we used to throw them at each other in place of bullets. So you'd have pockets full of these sharp stones, and when you saw one of your mates, you'd throw it as hard as you can to hit him, and then he was dead. I mean, the insanity of throwing sharp stones at each other was one of our favorite games. But the nonsense that we got up to, we hid from our parents, and you hid from your parents too. Lots of stuff gets hidden from parents. But pretty much what we did was in community, and we knew it could get back to our parents, especially when we broke a collarbone or got swept away by the canal or fell pregnant or got caught by the shopkeeper or by the neighbor. So we did naughty things, but there was a reality that we could get caught. So do not think that when I say our kids, I'm now talking about millennials, like the under 45s, but particularly the under 25s. They're also doing things and making sure that they don't get caught. The only difference is that we cannot catch them because we don't know what they're doing. They're not doing the same things that we did. One of the things that was discovered in lockdown was what the social media that kids had. Right? We all go TikTok, Snapchat, that's for kids. It's been that way for a long, mix it for kids. Instagram, that's not our thing. Posting photos of yourself, photos and photos and photos and photos and filters and nonsense. We do nonsense. So we don't look at it. We don't have those apps. I couldn't stand to have TikTok because it's like 30 seconds, change. But that's what they have. And what they're being directed to is more and more extreme things. There used to be a saying in newspapers, if it bleeds, it leads. Remember that? If it bleeds, it leads. The newspapers wanted catastrophe and disaster and murder and shock. Because if you went to the newsstand and there were 6 newspapers there, and one was about a murder in the city, and the others were about a library opening or something, which is the one that you're going to buy? The one that attracts your attention, that brings a bit of fear, that brings a reaction. They still do exactly the same thing. But this is not on a newsstand that we can walk past and have a look at. Okay. Now, we know, using social media, that if you look for something, for instance, I had to replace the lid of a toilet cistern, I looked for it online, and for about 2 weeks, all my adverts on Facebook and wherever were about plumbing parts, toilet parts, okay? Not that unusual, and it's actually fairly convenient, except that I bought the part for the toilet and I'm not interested anymore. But it monitors what you watch, what you like, what you react to. And you may not like it, but it's monitoring how long you watch it for. So, yeah, I started getting a whole lot of videos about Indian men riding motorcycles, which is on my Facebook Reels feed. All of a sudden, just all of my videos are about Indian men riding motorbikes and crashing them and dodging. Why am I suddenly seeing this? Because one day I was watching dash cam footage and there was a motorbike that did something weird, and I watched it 2 or 3 times. So what the algorithm realizes is he likes videos about people crashing motorbikes. Sorry to say, but Indians have a lot of motorbikes, and there's a lot of them. They have a lot of crashes. So it monitors what you're watching, how long you're watching it for, naturally what you interact with, whether you like it or not. So your feed is going to be in response to what you've been doing. So if you like, every time you see a clip of a puppy, you like it, it's going to show you more clips of puppies.
Yes.
Right? And like I said last time,
Just animals.
last time, most of us have made up our minds where we stand with God, where we stand politically, where we stand with big issues. We're not the target. We're not the target market. The target market for this insidiousness is the people under 25 who haven't made up their minds yet, really, about anything. And it's horrible that they started to realize in the 90s and the early 2000s. They knew this before, but think of the old soap ads, were always directed at housewives. Mm-hmm. And then they're fighting, Skip's fighting with Omos, fighting with this one, fighting with that one, to try and get the housewives to buy them. I mean, that's why they call them soap operas. Buy our soap. And then some clever marketing person said, why are we all boxing in the ring? Why don't we get the girls before they leave school, so that there's a brand loyalty? Then there will be Omo people when they grow up and they start buying washing powder. And as this has gone on, I remember Jonathan was at school, and Investec, Jonathan started his schooling at Bishop's. And there was this Investec evening. There's going to be a string quartet and whatever, and parents are invited. And I don't like Investec. I never have. That's on record. I've said it very publicly before. So I went to this thing anyway because it's with other parents and so on. And what what Investec was doing was, when they started, they said you have to have a certain net worth, a certain income, or a certain degree to be a client of Investec Private Bank. And it was one of the hardest private banks to get into. They made an exception and said that any college kid from Bishop's, college being the high school, could open an Investec account. That was very smart, because now you've got a bunch of kids who are probably going to be clients anyway in the private banking sphere. Get them while they're still in high school. You've got them as clients. And over the last couple of decades, that bar has been going lower and lower and lower, because now all the banks are competing for teenagers. So we're clever. Why don't we? I remember as a kid, we used to get Bob Save accounts, the card. Yeah, Bob Save. And then Standard Bank had one. They're going even younger than that now. They're targeting basically kids from the time they can start watching videos. Okay, Now, that's just so we could have a background as to why they're targeting people that's so young. Because they are undecided about things, and because behind all of this is 1, money, and 2, power. Right? Because the people who are doing this, and it's largely social media companies, it really is, if they have you or me online for so many hours, doing so many clicks, that's what they add up and that's what they sell to the advertisers. Right? Same as the newspaper and the old TV ratings. The higher your ratings, the more people watch for longer, you could charge more for your advertising. And that's where the corporates went. Because you had higher numbers than you, I'm paying more for your adverts because you're reaching more people. So the whole goal of the social media companies is to keep you locked in for as long as possible, interacting as much. And how do they do that? By things that make you anxious, by things that make you upset, things that intrigue you. Right? And for us, if you look at my YouTube feed, it's largely politics, religion, news, debates, and comedy and game shows and stuff like that. But it's not the same as my sons. And my sons, thank goodness, don't spend a lot of time on social media at all. But I think they're exceptional, and we've kind of kept our home as real as possible. So, the young generation, their rates of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicide are through the roof. I mentioned last time that the highest demographic for suicide is not middle-aged men anymore, as it always has been.
Teenagers.
It's young men under 25. Why are they killing themselves? On a practical sense, and this is a very practical sense, because they don't really have hope. If I go back to what I said earlier, when I was at high school, go to university, go to college and get a trade, start a career. By the time I'm 30, married. By the time I'm 60, my house is paid off. I retire and I see my grandkids. In South Africa and in the West in general, kids are saying, I go to university for what? I'm not guaranteed a job. Western Cape, unemployment 20%. Rest of South Africa, 33, 36%. Right? Our kids are saying, what's the point? 3, 4 more years to get a job. I might not even like that job because that's the way that they think. Us, more, you go be a doctor, you train to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor forever, whether you like it or not. If you train to be an engineer, you're going to be an engineer forever, whether you like it or not. We were taught to suck it up, do the good things with the bad things. Kids, not so much. So, I go to university, I'm not guaranteed a job. I'm also not guaranteed that I'm going to like that. And I spoke last time about, I'll call them boys and girls, but I'm talking about under 25s, because my boys are still boys. And how they don't want to date, how they don't want to get married. And I saw this in my generation. I was looking back at how my life went. I grew up in a very Christian environment. I went to a very Christian school, although it was not a Christian school. It wasn't an Anglican or Catholic school. It was a state school, but it was very, very, very Christian. That was my environment. But I was also viewed as a bit of a geek. Because even in my day, which was the 90s, the early 90s, Christians were geekish, conformists, do-gooders. Christians were looked down at that time. It's far worse now for young children. So, the marked upturn in this harm to young people started in 2013. Because obviously doctors track all this stuff. And what happened in 2013, well, what happened? What changed? What changed? That self-harm and depression and anxiety and suicide shot up in young people. It's marked. If you look at the graph, you'll literally see it does that, and then from 2013 it starts doing that. 2013 was when the smartphone was released. These. Remember, we had dumb phones before. You could text. Had predictive text. It had that snake game. Right? 2013 was when smartphones came out. And all of a sudden, your world was in there. And the world that they see is not the world that we see. It is not what you think. YouTube to me, sometimes it throws nonsense, but I skip past it. Sometimes Facebook Reels wants to show me Indian men crashing on their bicycles. I skip past it. Sometimes it wants to show me girls dancing. I skip past that, mostly. But the point is to try and hook me into something that I'm going to keep on watching, right? But we have filters and we value our time, so we skip. Kids don't skip. That's intriguing. The statistic on boys that are 13 years old that are addicted to pornography is phenomenal.
I didn't even know anything at that age.
Yeah.
I thought you had to get married to have children. I didn't know what happened.
So that was the beginning of the trouble that these kids are in, was 2013 when they started getting smartphones. Because before that, I remember we had YouTube on the TV in my house. We did. We had a computer that was hooked up to the TV, and I could watch YouTube and I could watch DSTV or whatever the case was. And I know my kids could watch it in their room. But then when it suddenly became this, we all know what this is. We all know exactly what this is, whether it was at the book or a magazine. With the kids sitting like this, we know they're watching something. So, what are they watching? Anything that keeps their attention. The rates, and I think we've heard about this a bit, that young girls are suffering with negative body image, that they are becoming anorexic, they're becoming bulimic, that they're seeing, and we've kind of come across this, the girls with the filters, and we tell people social media is not real, what you're seeing is not real. We knew that. You watched Baywatch, you knew every girl didn't look like that. You know, yes, you watch certain shows. Nobody, I don't know if David Hasselhoff is good looking, but remember all the American stuff, all the actors were always good looking. But we knew that's just TV. These kids don't really know that. They don't have bearings. They don't have bearings because their parents, mother and father, worked. In preschool, they were brought up by other people. In school and aftercare, they were brought up by other people. Mom and dad get home, they pick up the kids, they get home, they've got to cook supper, they've got to do this, they've got to do that. The kids go and sit and they watch TV, they go sit on their PlayStation, their Xbox or their PC. Where's the guidance comes from strangers? Strangers who are paid to do a job. So how are they supposed to know what's real and useful if they've only ever had paid carers? I remember as a kid the term latchkey kids. Kids had a key around their neck to open up the door because mom and dad weren't home. They had to look after themselves. And I remember there was like a bit of a stigma to being a latchkey kid. But let's zip forward. I'm going to shoot straight off to the side here, because I want you to understand how they can do things that are so stupid. We did stupid things. But what our kids, what our grandkids are doing is tremendously stupid. Because we had boundaries. When we used to canal surf, when it rained heavily and that canal, the water came flying down, we'd hang on to the bridge and we'd surf. We knew there would be consequences. Because we knew our parents would find out and then you'd get a hiding after they fetch you 2 kilometers down the canal. Right? We did stupid things. But what these kids are doing is immensely stupid. They're starving themselves. They're giving up. Recently, there were 4 million prescriptions for men under the age of 25 in 1 year for erectile dysfunction. Huh? Young men under 25 getting Viagra. That's how disinterested and disjointed they are from the world. Right? And there's a couple of reasons for that. When, in the early 90s, when I was in high school, the average home cost the average person 3 years' gross salary. I know this for a fact because I went to check. When my mother bought her house in 1991, she was earning roughly 38,000 a year, and she bought a house for 120,000. 3 years gross salary. So there was a hope that, you got to pay it off and it's going to take 15, 20 years, but you could afford it because it was 3 years gross salary. Do you know what it is today? 11 years. 11 years of the average person's salary is what it's going to cost them to buy an average house. You're 18, 19, 20, 22. You have no hope of buying a house. The cheapest houses in this neighborhood are little rundown houses in Summer Greens for R1 million, or a little flat in Burgundy, which is R1 million. So to buy that house, aside from the deposit that you need to earn 33,000 Rand a month. Okay, so now you've got that. Now you're going to have kids too. They can't afford to buy homes. They're not sure of their job stability. Getting married to girls, to guys, is a problem. What do they have to look forward to?
And they've got climate change, global warming.
They're told that just breathing is bad and having kids is bad for the environment. Yeah.
That's why they're immigrating more.
Well, immigrating to
They're
where?
immigrating.
England, Canada,
But it's the same
America,
everywhere.
Grass is
Australia.
green on the other side.
Yeah.
Thing is, it's the same over there. If you
Exactly.
just look at it, it's not just.
They don't know that.
They do
They
not.
don't know.
Yeah,
They
but
don't
it's
know.
the same. They don't know that.
There's another thing that these young people, their apathy is because they were sold a fake bill of goods. Look in South Africa, 94, the new dawn.
No, promising.
Hasn't got much, many of us anyway, but our kids, they're worse off. The white kids are being told, you can't get a job because you're white, and the black kids are being told, you can't get a job because of white monopoly capital. The fact is they can't get jobs. But one side says it's them, and the other side says it's them, and it's just our government. But it's not only our government. But the kids go, new South Africa, new dawn. What nonsense. They were all told the world's going to get better, and to them it just got worse. And it's run by people our age who are so out of touch with them. We make up laws. We don't even know what laws we're making up. There's an app on kids' cell phones that they can press a button. They've got 2 interfaces on their phone. One that's normal. If you pick up the phone and you look, or you say put in your password, you will see a whole lot of stuff on their phone that looks normal. They've got an app that then switches the phone to all the stuff that they hide. Parents don't know this. Aside from the stuff that they're being fed about the extreme right-wing views, the extreme left-wing views, the racist views, the gender people versus the non-gender people, immigrants versus citizens. They're being fed all this stuff. That's the stuff we know about. I'll tell you a tragic story. There's a young boy, 16 years old, in Florida. His name was Ian Mitchell. They found him in his room. He'd shot himself in the head. and it was viewed as a teen suicide. But the mother insisted, why would her son commit suicide? This is a problem, that teen suicide is fairly common. That is not that horrifying to people. Because he was happy and healthy and outgoing. And he showed no signs of depression or any kind of abnormal behavior for a healthy teen boy. When she finally got into his phone, she discovered that he'd been playing Russian roulette for likes, to get noticed. So he'd sit recording himself, tell people what he's going to do, everybody logs on, they're all watching him, he takes a gun and he fires. And of course it goes wild and people share the video and he's getting all those ego strokes. He did it 3 times, he didn't do it a 4th time.
Fourth time the bullet was there.
Yeah.
Came down.
For likes? A healthy kid doing that for likes?
Sad.
Do you think you would ever see videos of kids playing Russian roulette? I can tell you that you won't. Because Facebook, Meta, TikTok, all the others, they know what your age is and they won't show you that because they know we'll be outraged. They will only show stupid videos like that to teenagers who will then think he went viral, he became famous. Not obviously when he shot himself, but then they copy that. It's unbelievable.
But whose fault is all of that? The parents. They buy their kids guns.
Well, the gun's not the problem, because would that 16-year-old have shot himself? Would he have played Russian roulette with his friends? No.
The phone, I told you, it's the
It's the
phone.
media.
It's the media, this media.
The young kids, and I think Dorothy mentioned last time, the opposite of love is apathy.
Sorry?
Opposite of love is apathy, disinterest.
Disinterest, yeah. Not hate. Because hate is active.
In the Bible it says the opposite is fear, but certainly having no interest is worse. And young kids have no interest because they have an alternative. And that alternative is to go and live in this world where they control everything. I said that young men, 13, are having a problem with porn addiction. There are 2 things that young men do on their phones and on their PCs. Watch porn and play war games. And that's what they're doing. That even when they get into a relationship outside of a device, they're having to be prescribed
No, I see.
erectile dysfunction pills because they're so intimidated and so afraid of failing, and they don't feel like young men, that they can't do what young men are supposed to do.
Or they're engaged in domestic violence or something like that as well.
Well, that's the other problem, that young men and young women are more violent than older ones. And they're very frustrated with the system. They're extremely frustrated that they were sold this false bill of goods that TV games would be fun, and this will be fun, and that will be fun, and that you don't have to work hard, you don't have to put up with things that you don't like. And what they do is every time they don't like something, they change what they're doing. We were told as kids, and I remember this, if you cut a flower, it's beautiful for a few days. But if you look after the plant, it'll keep producing flowers. So we were told to invest in things, not just take the best, but invest in them. The kids are, if the plant dies, just get another one. Just get another one, just get another one, just get another one. In terms of where we're going on a macro scale, now this is very sad. It's very sad to talk about kids self-harming, kids trying to get identity. For young men, which I know a little bit more about, seeing my own young men, which are not timid guys, to see their kind of despair, that what hope is there for the future? What hope is there? I won't be able to afford kids. I won't be able to afford a home. Will I be able to get a girlfriend? Will I stay married? By the time I retire, what will the state of this world be?
And I think if you ask these days, you'll find that I would say 80% of the young people you speak to are going into IT or something like that. And very few of them are becoming carpenters, electricians,
Artisans anymore. There are no artisans anymore.
No, there's no artisan, there's no manufacturing in our country. Our country is bereft of manufacturing skills because everybody's becoming a manager or studying BA,
Because other than that, it doesn't pay enough.
marketing or business or something like that.
There's a couple of points. And the evil behind all of this is money.
Yeah.
That's right. Greed.
And the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. The people making money out of this, it is their sole desire to make money. And the people who are supposed to be policing them are the people who want the power. Because what politician doesn't want to know what Facebook knows? What government doesn't want to know as much about its citizens as Facebook knows? Remember, Facebook is YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. They know a tremendous amount about us. What government doesn't want that information? To know what we're saying and how we'll vote. What government doesn't want to be able to control my YouTube feed, to tell me that the DA is the best, or the ANC is the best, or Iqbal survey is evil, or Iqbal survey is good? What government doesn't want the ability to influence their citizens to know what they're thinking? So the two are complicit. Facebook is doing it for money, and the governments that should be stopping them are going, I've got a quote there that says, all men would be tyrants if they could. Politician to secure a re-election, and another one, what better way than to know exactly what he... And what better way to reach people before they can vote? And who can reach them? But the people showing the videos of suicide and...
Extortion.
And even we are being fed disinformation.
Well, that's weird because what the governments are doing is instead of going after these companies about what they're actually doing, the harm that they're doing to young people by telling them that they should be watching gay porn so that they can decide what they want to be if they're uncertain. That's telling them that gender is nonsense. That's telling them that the government doesn't care about them. That's encouraging them to rebel against their parents. Because when I didn't like what my mother or father was doing, I could gripe to my friends at school, and they'd gripe about their parents. And that's about as far as it ever went, right? If my dad was what's horribly offensive today, if my dad, my mother's hairdresser was gay, very gay. And my dad used to chirp sometimes because my dad was a beer drinking, horse race watching. I don't know if he was a homophobe, but he certainly felt very uncomfortable around my mother's very camp hairdresser. He used to come and do her hair at the house. And my dad would go in the backyard, start a Brian drink beer just to wash all the camp away from him. And my dad might say something, but now, and if I didn't like that particularly, but I mean, remember, I'm an older generation, but if I didn't like it, then I'd say, oh, my dad's a homophobe or something like that. And my friends, my dad's like this, oh, my dad's a racist, my dad's a misogynist, my dad's a this, my dad's whatever. And that's how far we go. Now what kids do is they go and put on TikTok. My father said this racist thing, I can't stand him, he's such a dinosaur, he's toxic patriarchy, and parents are getting arrested because their kids are telling on them. And of course that goes viral, so other kids see that example. So I didn't go in too much to AI because I think AI is very, very advanced technology for what we're dealing with. But stopping at social media and the harm that it's doing to a generation that's coming. The generation after me, the millennials, have got a major problem. They've got a major problem, and they hate us because we have control. They want control, and that's the most dangerous thing, is when the next generation gets control, where one of the markers of millennials is that it's all about me, it's all about how I feel, it's all about what I like. You can't say anything that's offensive, you can't say anything that hurts anybody else, you can't spend your money the way that you want to. What are those people going to do when they're in charge? And the next generation? But let's end on a little bit of good news. Okay. Because I told you this because I want you to know what's actually going on, how bad it is. I could probably sit here for 6 hours and give you statistics on how bad it is and show you things that will horrify you. But I want you to become aware that you weren't even aware that this kind of stuff is out there. It sounds extreme. It's not extreme. It's not extreme. To us, it's absolutely bizarre to do what some of these... For us, it's bizarre for somebody to sit in a room for 12 hours and play a video game. Go to sleep 3 o'clock in the morning when you've got to get up for work. They do this. And that's the mildest form of behavior. But something that is happening is that Gen Z, these 25s and unders, are very, very angry. They're very angry young people. They don't know what to do with anger because they didn't really have role models. Role models, as I said, mom's working, dad's working, they've got professional caregivers, they've got teachers, they don't spend weekends with mom and dad, they're not out buying with dad, they aren't working on the car with dad, they're not seeing their uncles and cousins at family gatherings like we used to. Everything is in here. They don't have the language to be able to say, we're not going to take it anymore, because they speak through this. And one thing that we saw, everybody said, what the hell happened with these pro-Hamas rallies? How did that happen? Otopis like us were stunned. Where did this come from? Pro-Hamas. These kids don't even know what Hamas is. October the 7th, there's a terrorist attack. Next day, London. People chanting in the streets and cheering. Within a week, they're occupying high school college campuses. Where did all the flags come from? Where the hell did they get Palestinian flags? But they suddenly had them, and they had banners, and they were moving on campuses. And one of the lawmakers said it's because they communicate faster than we do. In the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, if you wanted to organize a protest, remember, hand out flyers at the college, don't let anybody see you. Kids want to identify, and they copy things that they see made us human and made us strong. And most of them have no idea where Israel is on a map, let alone Gaza. They don't know which river to which sea. They don't know what, like Douglas Murray said, queers for Palestine is like chickens for KFC. They don't even know that homosexuality is banned in Gaza, but they've got a group called Queers for Palestine. They'll be murdered if they go into Gaza, but they don't have an idea, but they want to emulate the resistance that was in our generation, whether it was toying against apartheid, whether it was against the Vietnam War, whether it was whatever. Protests have always been fun to young people. I know my wife ended up in the back of a police van. She went to toy against apartheid. She had no idea what it was, but she heard it going on. She ran out of school, joined it, and she got arrested. As a protest, she didn't know what it was. I think it was something about Alan Busak or something like that. But kids wanted, there's a mob, there's a riot, let's go do that. They want for identity, and the speed at which they get information. The information that they get is not balanced like the information that we used to get, where the news told the news, because there wasn't accountability. Remember when newspapers used to print retractions? If they said something wrong, somebody pointed it out, they'd print a retraction. They don't have to do that because Facebook doesn't need to retract anything. But the good news is that the younger generation rejects things like open plan offices. They want, if they become a manager, they want a closed office. That's a major change. When I was young and you became a manager, you've got an office.
That's right.
You may got a parking space. You've got your name on the door. The millennials said everything must be open plan, no titles. The next generation, these Gen Xers have gone the other way. They're saying, no, actually, I want my space and I want my title. I want to earn what I have. I don't like coming sixth and getting a prize for first place. I don't like sunshine prizes. They've seen the fakeness of the world and they want reality. One of the things that they're doing, and this young men in particular are looking to God again, because they don't like all the nonsense and all the fake stuff. They want tradition. They want rules that work. I may do this, I may not do that. There must be, they want, like young men always have. Why have young men always loved armies? Always young boys playing armies, and there's a general, there's someone in charge.
Well, I've got a 5-year-old grandson that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Because they love order and they love rules and they love discipline. They don't like being told
That's right.
that your gender is what you choose it to be. They don't like that. They don't like everything being relative. I worked for Amazon for a while. I quit because I couldn't stand the stupidity of the company and the way they treated people like absolute idiots, like kindergarten. But that's the way that millennials run companies. So there is a hope for a younger generation, but what we need to do is, one, be aware that a lot of the stuff, there's no ways for you to know. I watched a documentary on 60 Minutes where they went into social media and they showed parents this app that could hide what was in their phone, and the parents were shocked. They were absolutely shocked to see what their kids were seeing and how they could hide it. And what they did in this documentary was they juxtaposed the parents discovering with the kids. And a lot of the kids were like, yes, that's what we can see. Yes, that's what we do. Like, you saw it, so dumb. How did you not know this? They're looking at their parents, and you're like, you're absolute fools. Of course this is what we see. When we hear that the videos trying to make kids go out and do stupid things, like rallies for odd things, or playing Russian roulette, or starving themselves, the kids look at us like we're idiots. Like, how could you not know this? It's all been kept from us. So, one, be more aware that what the young people are going through is nothing like we went through. That they want help. They don't know how to ask for it. They want community, which is what we were built from. Their lives are being stolen from them by corporations and governments, who are telling them you can have whatever you want, whenever you want, and nobody's allowed to tell you otherwise. They need help. They need us to reach out to them. So in your sphere, whether it's with your kids or your grandkids, or neighbors, or your community, be more understanding of what they're going through, that it's not just them being lazy and addicted to their phones, spending too much time on their phones. Don't judge them when you see them in restaurants with an iPad that their parents gave them. When they're disrespectful or weird or come across as being weak because every kid's got an allergy to something, every kid's offended by something, and we judge them for being weak. Because most of them don't have allergies. It's another thing that they make up to become victims. When you see them dressing weirdly or choosing pronouns, don't judge them for it. How are they supposed to know better? And as Christians, the church is becoming more relevant now. The world's in trouble. I spoke about, who was it that was... it was Robert Epstein, who studies social media, massive think tank. And he was eventually asked, so if this is the state of everything, what hope do we have? And he said, we don't have any hope. But we do. And we've got to stay the course. We've got to be kind to young people. We've got to keep welcoming them to church so that they can have community. We've got to be less judgmental and more reaching out. There's a beautiful program in, I think it's in Norway, where kids go to a living library. It's senior citizens who go to the library and they read stories and they tell stories to young people. Young people go sit in the library and they can spend half an hour with you, listening to your stories, reading a book, talking about topics. Kids, that's the youngest generation doing that. Going to a library not to read books because they don't read books. Because books, the pages don't flip and the pages don't flash. But young kids, this program is phenomenal. Because really, if it's so economically dire that parents are battling so hard with second and third jobs and stressing about money, they don't have time to spend with their teenagers and their tiny ones.
I see that with my daughter. And
That's
it
true,
kills her.
that's true.
Yeah.
She can't spend time with the kids because she has to do 2-3 jobs to just make ends meet.
Yeah, you can't hire a... I remember growing up, my mother worked, but we had a maid. So the maid cleaned the house, sometimes cooked the food. So when my mom got home, it was sit down and watch TV and have supper and get the baths done and get your uniform ready. Is your uniform ready? How can you afford a maid nowadays? 5 days a week? The parents don't have the time. And the parents are stressed. They're also sitting looking at their phones. They're also sitting watching YouTube or Netflix or whatever the case is. That's a beautiful idea, that the senior citizens went and sat at the library and they tell stories about their lives and they listen to the youngsters. And they hear.
In our church, to embrace our young people, to make them feel that they're not just the kids in the hall next door.
You get the old auntie that says, I hate it when the Sunday school comes in because they make a noise. No,
I never done it when they come in.
we have to, like you say,
Exactly, and it's listening when the Sunday school is saying we need extra helpers. And really to give up the odd service and say, look, maybe I can't teach every Sunday, but I can come and do you one or two a month so that it'll help out in the Sunday school. I've sat for years and listened. I remember being in a church context where we didn't have anyone to teach the grade 6s. And we pleaded from the pulpit week after week for teachers to come forward. Nobody came forward, and eventually my husband got up in the pulpit and he said, right, this church no longer has a grade 6 class.
Shame.
To me it was the saddest day when you actually had to say it out there. You people don't want to take responsibility for the grade 6s. Nobody wants to do it. We won't have one.
Yeah.
And it was a shock tactic, but it worked, you know. And yeah, I think that's what us here, you know, say to Andre, let's have a granny and grandpa morning where we come and talk to the children or something like that. We tell them what our lives are like, what are their lives like, something to interact with them and make them feel they are family. That's what we need to be sharing with them. They're not just the kids over there, they are family.
But the sad thing is, Laura, that a lot of the parents don't then come to church, they just drop the kids
That's
off.
That's
That is the...
right.
But can you blame them because their lives are so busy and maybe that is the only time they have to go shopping or do whatever? It's sad, but that's
But
the
that
reality.
is the reality we live in with, unfortunately.
My daughter-in-law, years ago when we were at Willowstill, the minister there was very full on. You had to belong to this and belong to that and belong to the other thing. And she listened to all my talking and eventually she said, I can't be a member of that church. So I said, why? She said, I work, I can't do all the things. I've got a family and a home.
Yeah.
She said, I can't get involved, and if that's what he's demanding, I can't be a member of that church.
And also the way society's changed, we didn't have shops open on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, so it's been a complete
Exactly.
360.
Oh.
I mean, 5 o'clock, if not even before, on a Saturday, things
And
start
1
closing
o'clock.
down.
Yeah.
You know, 1
I
o'clock.
think
Or
that's
2 o'clock,
right.
excepting essential services. Everything shut down at 1 o'clock.
And everybody could go to church.
You played sport on a Saturday afternoon, you all went to church on a Sunday, and then the Sunday afternoon you'd either have a family day or you'd go
Go for a
visiting.
drive.
That's right.
Exactly, or a drive.
Sunday afternoon was go visit the family.
Yes.
Doesn't happen.
Sundays.
Sorry, Brent, we interrupted you.
No, not at all. I remember Sundays going to my gran. Oh, when she had a cholesterol problem, she just started boiling everything after that. It was just miserable going to. I loved going to her until she had the cholesterol thing. Then it was boiled chicken and boiled veg, and everything was boiled. The highlight was.
Advertising food.
Yeah, that's all. It's all changed, but I try to stay ahead, but I'm still shocked. And I've got young kids that I can talk to every day, and they won't tell me everything, but I certainly like the whole voting thing. 9 kids in the house, not one of them went to vote, and we said why. And they said, what's the point? Nothing's going to change. And you swap this government for that government. You know, nothing you did ever changed anything in the last 30 years. You complain, nothing happened. You vote, nothing changes. But yeah, what you can do is just be kinder to them and spend real time, promote real things. Be aware. Very often just being aware that there's something that you didn't know about enables you to make a difference.
I've got a little girl that used to be in my aftercare. She's probably 11. She lives in the Eastern Cape now. And she puts on her status that I cringe. Everything about like Hamas and she's for the Palestinians, not for the... And she's got... The info is so wrong when I read it. I'm like, they don't know. It says about the Israelis are cutting off the babies' heads and all. And she says, how can you live with this? And like things like that. And this, what's this LBTG? What's this stuff?
Yeah.
And there's Rainbow Week month. I ran all the way now. But all that type of stuff she puts on.
This last week I got to watch At the Coalface. I don't know if any of you know Ronaldo Gous, new DA Member of Parliament. All the drama, well, most of us wouldn't have seen it because most of us are not on X and you wouldn't see it on Facebook. But on Twitter there was a huge uproar because Ronaldo has done he's been a YouTuber for forever. And he's a young Afrikaans guy, very reasonable, but I find him a little bit aggressive at times and a little bit negative. The name of his channel is Tsek. That's it, Tsek, like Futsek.
TSUK.
And he's always going on about government and the ANC this and the council is that. And a lot of but he's also very, like a young guy, he's also very pro-love and anti-racism. And like, you know, we all need to get along. They're the idiots, not we. And as I say, his tone to me is a little bit angry, but he is an angry young man growing up in a society like the rest of the angry young men. And he now became a dear MP, and this whole thing blew up where he said something that was off-colour, racist, and it wasn't really. And then, a couple of days later, this video came out, this clip of him being very young. He hadn't even grown a beard yet. That's how young he was. And forgive the words, but the video says, I'm sick and tired of this. Why don't we just kill all the Kafirs, kill all the niggers? I looked at this, I thought, what the hell was that? That's when I started being aware of him. He had a beard. He was a university student. I'm like, was he like that as a kid? He must have been 18 or so. I was shocked.
It's hate speech in our country, yeah.
But it's not because, and that was brought out by independent newspapers, who's famously useless. I had to look, and luckily, I connect to the left and the right, Democrats, Republicans, ANC. I listen to what this one says and that one says and whatever. And the 6-minute video came out. And the video was, because straight after that he says, how does that make you feel when you hear that as a black person? This is how I feel when I hear Julius Malema saying, kill the bull, kill the farmer.
So he was not actually calling people that. He was asking them to understand how these races feel.
You see, they cut the thing in like,
They cut it to literally seconds.
just to that.
Where he was, admittedly for clout, because that gets your attention and you watch. So originally people would watch and then he'd say, how does that make you feel? How do you think it makes me feel when you stand up and you chant to kill white people and push them into the sea, but you do it? So I got to, and the storm of people reacting.
Straight out of
Yeah.
Parliament and everything.
He's been suspended. The absolute storm that came out of that through selective nonsense. But what stunned me was how many people agreed with it. And they started going on about it. And when you say, watch the whole video, they go, oh, now all of a sudden it's about context. You can be racist if it's in context. Well, if you watch the whole video, you'll know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and that's what our kids have, the attention span that limits 30 seconds. And somebody said the other day that if it's more than 3 seconds, you've lost them. Okay, anyway.
Thank you.
Martin?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Brent. That was real.
Lovely.
Well, yes, an eye-opener and a stirrer, and getting us thinking about our grandchildren and our children, my great-grandchildren,
That's
in
right.
fact, who's here already, and what she faces in the future. And knowing very often that our own children are living lives that are not in touch with the reality who is God. They have rejected even God because that holds far more sway in their life, the social media, than the Bible and God's Word. So I guess that is a real thing for us to pray into and to be aware of in our own families. Thank you so much for
If I
that.
might just say something, just before we came down here, I was speaking to a young lady who lived across the road from us, and she had small toddlers, and she went to a baby shower, and she said that we were discussing what was the best educational toy for a small child. So me thinking Tupperware ball, building blocks from Lego.
Yeah.
The consensus among the young mums was it was a tablet. Was the best educational toy for a toddler. And you see our toddlers and babies with
Yes,
play, with mommy and daddies.
That's the nanny.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
play with him from small.
They know how to
Mother
swipe
gives
better than
that.
me.
Yeah, the mother gives that to them and they play.
Anyway.
Anyway, we run out of time.
Thank
so
you.
let's end it off, but I just want to say also that next week we are in Martin's hands. Harry is going to be joining us, and we are then going to re-enter the fray of the Holy Spirit, and then from there on we will continue.